Throughout his life, Padre Pio of Pietrelcina insisted with unshakable certainty that the most decisive realities of the world are not visible to human eyes. They are not measured in cold numbers, nor in worldly successes, nor in earthly recognition. Rather, they are measured in what happens in the sacred silence of the soul, when a person kneels down, closes their eyes to the exterior world, and pronounces a prayer with true faith. Among all the prayers he fervently recommended to his spiritual children, none occupied such a central and vital place as the Holy Rosary. He did not see it as a simple pious devotion fulfilled out of family tradition, or as a mechanical repetition of ancient words transmitted through the centuries. For him, the Rosary was much more than that. It was a living and dynamic work, a profoundly creative act that simultaneously transformed heaven and earth, creating invisible bridges between material and spiritual reality. According to the testimony transmitted by those who had the privilege of living close to him and hearing his words directly, Padre Pio spoke of the Rosary with a certainty that deeply impressed everyone present. These were not theological speculations nor abstract reflections. It was a certainty born from direct mystical experience, from someone who saw realities that others could not perceive. He said with absolute conviction that every Hail Mary pronounced is never lost in the void of the universe. It does not fall into nothingness. It does not dissolve into the air like smoke. Each time a soul pronounces those sacred words, with sincere love and attention of the heart, something absolutely real occurs in the invisible world. In his simple yet profoundly mystical language, he explained that each Hail Mary becomes an authentic spiritual rose, delicately placed in the immaculate hands of the Virgin Mary, not as a simple poetic symbol or a beautiful metaphor for preaching, but as a concrete and tangible spiritual reality in the eternal dimension. To fully understand this extraordinary teaching, one must enter into the spiritual logic that Padre Pio lived day after day. For him, heaven is not an abstract, distant and inaccessible place, floating in some remote corner of the cosmos. It is a living, active and present reality that constantly interacts with human life at every moment. The Virgin Mary is not a distant historical figure from the biblical past, nor an immobile statue in churches. She is a living, real and active mother who receives each prayer, guards each sigh of love, and uses each act of faith offered by her earthly children. When a believer prays the Hail Mary with authentic faith, conscious attention and sincere devotion, that prayer is instantly transformed into a heavenly rose that Mary gathers with infinite maternal tenderness, and that rose does not remain motionless in her hands like a static ornament. It has a specific destiny, a concrete mission, a determined fruit in God's providential plan. Padre Pio explained in great detail that the Virgin uses those spiritual roses to carry out concrete works of mercy in favor of suffering humanity. Some of those roses are offered directly for the conversion of sinners. According to his profound teaching, there are souls hardened by sin that do not open through rational arguments, severe punishments, or terrible fears, but only through a pure act of love offered in silence from some corner of the world. A single Hail Mary prayed with a totally surrendered heart can miraculously touch a soul that seemed hopelessly lost in darkness. That rose becomes a gentle yet infinitely powerful grace, capable of piercing through the most resistant defenses that pride or sin have built. Other roses, the holy friar said with a moved voice, are carried directly to the dying in their last moments of earthly life. In the crucial moment of death, when the soul finds itself fragile, confused or filled with fear before the unknown, the Virgin approaches lovingly, accompanied by all the prayers that have been offered through her. Each Hail Mary prayed specifically for the dying becomes profound consolation, heavenly light, supernatural peace. Padre Pio firmly insisted that no one truly dies alone when there are souls praying for the dying. Even if the agonizing person is not conscious of these prayers, those roses act as a divine balm that prepares the soul for the definitive encounter with its Creator. He also spoke extensively about the invisible protection of families through the Rosary. He taught that the Rosary prayed at home is not merely a pious custom inherited from previous generations, but a true spiritual wall that protects the home. Each Hail Mary adds to the others, forming what he tenderly called a protective bouquet. Not a single isolated and weak flower, but a complete and robust bouquet that covers the family home with its heavenly fragrance. That bouquet protects from internal divisions, from hidden violence that destroys from within, from negative influences that constantly seek to destroy family unity and peace. Where the Rosary is prayed with constancy and faith, he categorically affirmed, there is a divine presence that does not allow evil to act with total freedom. A particularly moving part of his teaching refers to the souls in purgatory, those beloved souls who are in the process of purification before entering eternal glory. Padre Pio, who claimed to see them and hear them in his nocturnal apparitions, said that the prayers of the Rosary relieve their suffering in an absolutely real and tangible way. Each Hail Mary offered with specific intention for the deceased becomes a luminous rose that descends to those souls thirsting for love, bringing them immediate relief, renewed hope, and effective reduction of their time of purification. He insisted that many of these blessed souls do not await great extraordinary sacrifices, but small acts of faithful and constant love, like a simple rosary prayed daily with sincere intention and devout heart. In his extraordinary spiritual vision, the Rosary also plays an absolutely decisive role in the daily struggle against the temptations that besiege the soul. Padre Pio did not speak of temptation as an abstract idea of moral theology, but as a concrete and aggressive reality that attacks the soul with specific strategies. He said that Hail Marys prayed with true attention and concentration create an invisible but highly effective defense around the person who prays. Each rose becomes a protective barrier that progressively weakens the force of temptations, especially those that act in a persistent, silent, and seemingly innocuous manner. They do not always completely eliminate the trial, as God permits certain spiritual combats to strengthen the soul, but they certainly give the supernatural strength necessary to resist it with courage. Another profoundly consoling dimension of this mystical revelation is the spiritual accompaniment of the sick. Padre Pio taught that physical or moral suffering voluntarily offered and united to the Rosary has immense value in the economy of salvation. When a sick person prays, even with enormous difficulty, and amid acute pains, each Hail Mary they manage to pronounce acquires a much greater spiritual weight before the eyes of God. Those roses become extraordinarily luminous because they are born from transformed pain, offered with generous love. The Virgin, according to the saint's testimony, approaches in an especially tender way those who pray from the bed of suffering, and uses those precious roses to pour abundant consolation and inner peace, not only upon the one who prays, but upon many other needy souls. He also spoke, with great delicacy and respect, of unborn children. In an era when these realities were barely discussed openly in society or in churches, Padre Pio affirmed without ambiguity that the Rosary possesses a silent but real power of protection over the most fragile and defenseless lives. Each Hail Mary prayed with this specific intention becomes a rose that actively defends human life at its most vulnerable beginning, not always in a visible way or with immediate results that we can verify, but always in an absolutely real and effective manner in God's mysterious providential plan. Marriage occupied an absolutely central place in his daily spiritual teaching. He said that marriages strengthened by the family rosary receive a special and abundant grace from heaven, not because all the problems, conflicts, or difficulties proper to human coexistence magically disappear, but because the roses accumulated day after day create a favorable spiritual climate that facilitates mutual forgiveness, nourishes patience in difficult moments, and sustains fidelity when it is put to the test. A rosary prayed by the husband or wife, even in solitude when the other does not participate, becomes a powerful offering that the Virgin uses strategically to sustain that sacred bond when it seems dangerously fragile. Padre Pio constantly insisted on an absolutely essential point that he never tired of repeating. It is not the quantity of prayers that transforms heaven and moves the hand of God, but the authentic love with which they are prayed. A single Hail Mary pronounced with living faith, full attention and total surrender of the heart, is worth infinitely more before God than very many Hail Marys prayed with distraction, haste, or empty routine. He did not despise repetition at all, as he recognized its pedagogical and contemplative value, but he seriously warned against mechanical and soulless habit. The Rosary, he insisted, is not an automatic chain of memorized words, but a conscious act of loving presence before God and his Mother. When the heart is truly absent, the rose withers before it is even born. This teaching naturally led to a much deeper understanding of the Rosary prayed as a family. When several people pray together in communion of faith and love, the roses do not simply add up arithmetically. They multiply exponentially in spiritual power. Padre Pio described the family rosary as a collective and harmonious work that creates an especially powerful and beautiful bouquet. Each family member contributes their own roses with their own love, and the Virgin gathers them all and mystically unites them in a single magnificent offering. That family bouquet, he affirmed with total certainty, has a power of protection and blessing that no purely human effort can ever equal. Regarding rosaries prayed specifically in the midst of physical or moral suffering, Padre Pio was absolutely clear and categorical. They have a special and precious value. When a person prays while patiently carrying a cross, their Hail Marys become incomparably more valuable before the eyes of God. Not because pain is masochistically sought as an end in itself, but because when it is freely offered with love, it is transformed into something sublime. Those roses born from redemptive pain, he said, have a completely different heavenly brightness, and are used by the Virgin to obtain extraordinary graces that would otherwise never reach certain souls. One of the most mysterious and hope-filled affirmations of his teaching refers to the end of times and to eternity. Padre Pio spoke with a voice full of wonder about a glorious moment in which all the Hail Marys prayed throughout the entire history of humanity will be visibly manifested as an immense eternal garden in heaven. Each rose will have there its unique place, its specific color, its known origin. Nothing will be lost in oblivion. No prayer made with love, however small it may seem, will ever be forgotten in eternity. Everything will form part of the eternal beauty carefully prepared by God for his faithful children. From this transformative perspective, the Rosary definitively ceases to be a monotonous and boring repetition and becomes a true spiritual creation with eternal consequences. Each prayer leaves a permanent mark in eternity. Each Hail Mary modifies something real in the invisible world. Each rose placed in the hands of the Virgin actively participates in a divine work that infinitely surpasses time and space. Padre Pio insistently invited everyone to pray the Rosary with this renewed and profound awareness. Not with paralyzing fear, not out of legalistic obligation, but with the joyful certainty that each word pronounced with love has an absolutely real impact in the economy of salvation. Heaven is not built only with great heroic gestures that are recorded in history books, but also and especially with small prayers faithfully offered humbly day after day by hidden souls. In this mystical teaching is enclosed a profoundly consoling and democratic hope. No one is too spiritually poor to offer at least one rose to Mary. No one is excluded from this marvelous work due to their social, cultural, or spiritual condition. A small child, a sick elderly person, an exhausted mother, a tired worker, all absolutely can create eternal beauty with a single Hail Mary prayed with sincere faith. Thus, the central message of this revelation is luminously clear. The Rosary is not empty repetition, it is real transformation. It is not boring routine, it is living creation. Each prayer is a rose that never dies, that the Virgin uses eternally to heal, protect, console, and save. And in the eternal silence of heaven, those roses never cease to bloom.